Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. My name is VashSky. I'm your host of today's ceremonies here from lovely Palm Springs, which, by the way, has a lot of history attached to it, especially in Hollywood circles and Hollywood history. But to tell us all about that and more, I give you the one, the only, Lou Wasserman's Ghost.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone out there, for sharing a little bit of your Sunday with us, if you're with us live. And if not, where were you on Sunday instead of here? Shame on you. Well, Palm Springs was always kind of the playground in the desert for Hollywood because it's only a couple hours out of L.A. Driving wise. It actually used to be less before there was so much traffic and so much enforcement of speed laws. And there were all these places you used to stop at on the way, particularly beautiful scenic Cabazon, which, although you may say, what the heck is that? You've seen it, I'll bet, because it's where those fake dinosaurs are that are in, I think it's the Pee Wee Herman movie that shot out there. It's also where there's this place called Hadley's, which is famous for dried nuts and fruits and stuff. And then, of course, out there in the desert, there's all those places to do date shakes. And there's a place called Shields Date Farms that I don't know if they still have the sign, but it used to see, come see our movie called The Sex Life of a Date, where they show you how they propagate dates. So you can have a heck of a hot date out in Palm Springs and Palm Desert and Indio and all those places. Also in Indio, the Coachella County State or County Fair is or was very Arabian themed, because in those days that wasn't a dirty word like it is now because of politics. And they had this pageant called the Mystery of Scheherazade, I think it was. And they have this permanent building with a minaret and palaces and lights. And they had camel races in those days. I don't know if any of this still exists, but now instead they've got Coachella. That's hardly a good substitute, in my opinion, but what do I know?
Yes.
But everything was Arabic out there as a theme. So it was a theme park in a way, but not a park. And they really went with it because, hey, it was a way to go. A lot of fancy houses out there. Those of you who remember Diamonds Are Forever, and that scene with James Bond versus Bambi and Thumper in this wild, crazy cantilevered house, that house is out there. And, of course, Bob Hope and Frank Sinatra and a lot of people famously had houses out there. So it's a fun place.
It's a fun place. Also, the playground of the presidents. A lot of the presidents make their way out here after.
Gerald Ford, yes. And, well, old people like heat. I don't, but they do. It's better on their joints, and I don't know. I never got into the heat personally, but it's a dry heat. It's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat, right?
I always joke with people that I thought moving here to the southeast that my biggest fear was hitting all that wet heat and the humidity. And frankly, although that's not fun, you can go inside and avoid it. Whereas the shock to me has been the winter, which, although it isn't really persistent. I mean, we get snow for 2 or 3 days in a row and it's gone in another day. But it's still, I never had to deal with weather. I never looked at weather reports before when I lived in Los Angeles because there is no such thing. Anyhow, what's new on our agenda of fun stuff? Should we get the music out of the way?
Sure.
The jukebox selection I chose for this week, folks, I chose because it's great music. It's the themes and music from the Poseidon Adventure, the great disaster movie by John Williams. But what's fun about it is this guy, Soundtrack Fred, sometimes gets these recordings not off a soundtrack record, but from the actual original studio masters. And at this one, you can hear John Williams talking to the orchestra at the beginning before they say, okay, let's do it. And boom, suddenly here comes the music. And of course, as seen in the foreground of that picture, it is one of the roles among so many that we treasure Gene Hackman for. So there you go.
Let's listen to that right now, actually, because I think that's a really, really cool and Only YouTube's going to ding us for that. So let's go ahead and listen to orchestra kind of warm up here before recording actually takes place. Well, the start of the official. That is.
Whenever lovely.
They're missing some harmony chords.
We're still rolling.
Okay, here we are. 1, 2, 3, go.
That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Just kind of warming up and getting everything ready right here. Let me go ahead and put this in the chat so everybody can enjoy it. And I think this is really, really cool. It's always, I love how Lou does this because it really puts you in a time and place that is beyond a small and really sets you into that adventure, being a Poseidon Adventure, of whatever orchestral score that of whatever movie that is.
Of course, a lot of that movie was shot aboard the Queen Mary, which is permanently in the harbor down there. And then for a while, Disney actually controlled the boat and turned it into kind of theme parky stuff. And they even had their own version of kind of a Halloween Horror Nights thing on the Queen Mary. As I recall, it was the Haunted Queen Mary for Halloween. But yeah, that was bringing that ship there. I was down there for the grand premiere before Disney or anybody else, but the city was in charge. And you may remember there was a Jacques Cousteau undersea museum within the bowels of the Queen, as well as turning it into a hotel and restaurants and all the rest of it. And there was a tour of the ship. And I was sitting with one of the Long Beach City Council members who was telling me the story of how they got it. They were not the high bidder, but the high bidder was to scrap it. And Cunard did not want it destroyed. And so they got it. And what was interesting was that to do the renovations on it, if it remained a ship, you have to hire the maritime labor unions for electricians and plumbers and welders and all the rest of that, who are averaging about 3 times the same hourly rate as land-based ones. So they didn't want to do that. But in order to disqualify it as a ship, you had to literally make it so it couldn't make steam again. It couldn't actually be sailed away again, even though they planted it pretty permanently there. So they had to yank out almost all of the boilers and the engines, except for the one area they left as kind of a demo for the tour to go through. How do you get it out? The ship is built around those things when it's built. Well, the answer was that the biggest way to get down into the guts of the ship is down through those 3 funnels, because the stack shafts are pretty wide, and you could go in there with a crane and yank out pieces as long as you cut them small enough to go up through there. So they thought, well, we'll just take the smokestacks off and put them back on when we're done. No, you won't, because they took those pieces, as you can see, it's in sections, and disconnected them, and everything was fine, and disconnected the various guy wires, as they call them, that were stressing them to hold them in the right position. When they set them down on the dock, they disintegrated.
Ooh.
They literally crumbled into dust. And they brought in a metallurgist who said, oh, yeah, after all those years at sea, the rust coming in from the outside and the inside being worn away by the hot gases of the smokestack, there was nothing left but paint. The actual metal was gone. And when you took away the guy wires holding it up and you put it under its own weight on the... So anyway, what you see there are imitations that they built afterwards to look like the originals.
Right.
The other fun thing, if you ever go to the Queen Mary, which is still there and still open as a tourist attraction, you go to what they call Piccadilly Circus, which is the main central shopping hub of the main deck, off of which were the restaurants and then that big ballroom that's in the Poseidon Adventure. The floors were made out of something called rubeolium. Rubeolium was a version of linoleum that had a lot of rubber in it. And the reason was, if you dropped something like dishes, it would kind of bounce to a stop as opposed to shattering and making a mess, because at sea, especially since that ship basically plied the North Atlantic, you could get some pretty rough oceans in there. Anyway, if you look at the corners, there are rails all around this nice, beautiful stainless steel railings to hold on to in case the ship is bucking and rolling. Take a look at the corners, and what you see are these little tiny round circles dug into this rubeolium stuff. And what they are is the stiletto heels of the women's shoes of the day as they're holding on for dear life not to fall over and digging their heels into the floor. Anyway, there's all kinds of fun stuff like that aboard the Queen, and she's still a grand old lady. And of course, she's famous for, during World War II, being turned into a troop carrier to take soldiers across because she was faster than any submarine and she could outrun them. They couldn't line up on her. So anyway.
She was absolutely fantastic. And you mentioned that Disney owned her. Yes, they did. And
well, they owned the contract to manage her. Let's put it that way. They never physically owned the boat.
Yeah, that's a good distinction right there. And people might be asking, how did that happen? Well, it was part of the acquisition of the Rather Corporation, and that their assets, mainly to get the rights back for the Disneyland Hotel and the use of the Disney name within Southern California, which Walt graciously gave Jack Rather a 99-year lease on when he originally did the deal for the Disneyland Motel at that point back in 1955. So very, very cool. I love that amazing history.
And then the other thing, just to the right of this picture, down at the end of the pier, is the huge dome that held the Spruce Goose for a while, which was then turned into actually a sound stage. And I forget what the title is, but the Batman movie with Jim Carrey as the Riddler, and I guess that's also the one with Arnold as Mr. Freeze. All of those big scenes from that movie were shot in that dome, because they didn't have a soundstage big enough that was available. So anyway, well, that's Long Beach in a nutshell, and Palm Springs in a nutshell. And what's new in the biz? There you go. That's taking it back out or putting it in. I don't know which, but
I don't know which either. But
actually, I think that's putting it in because it isn't quite closed in all the way around.
Right. But yes, you can see right there the two of them together in a very rare shot. Before we leave Palm Springs, though, just want to go ahead and point this out right here. This is kind of a fun story. Coachella mayhem boils over as festival goers brave 12-hour lines and near record temperatures, literal hell.
All to have Bernie Sanders yell at him and tell him how nervous he's making Donald Trump. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. It did not go well, at least for the first day of Coachella. At least getting people in there anyway, that is. So I thought that was kind of a little bit of a funnier story. Not funny to be in, but funny to laugh at for everybody not going.
This is the worst organization I've ever seen at a festival, and this is Coachella, for God's sakes. The person posted. Yes.
Yeah, the amazing institution that is Coachella. But you mentioned what's going on in the biz. Well, there's a lot going on in the biz. And before we get to some international business issues, we'll get to domestic ones. There you go. Luis Fernando, Snow White approaches the end of the line at global box office after grossing just $4.7 million on the fourth weekend overseas, a 47.8% drop from last weekend for a $99.7 million international cum over 53 markets, allied to its $81.9 million cum in the United States. The film starring Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot hits a $181.6 million global cum, eyeing a 195 to 210 global run, a financial disaster with a $250 million price tag, not even including marketing. This says right here, it might not even reach $90 million.
And by the way, when you see this stuff about what the budget was or what it costs, it's a lot more. And consider one thing. This was supposed to open, a year ago?
Yes.
But because of all the reshoots and things, it took that much longer. Well, guess what, folks? Nobody goes to their piggy bank and pulls out $200 million to make a movie. They borrow it. And if you take a loan out and you take longer to pay it back, what are you paying in the meanwhile, class? Anybody? Bueller? Interest on that money. So a year's extra interest on the original and subsequent loaned money is also not figured in that price, along with other things like star salaries. When they say, hey, Rachel, Gal, you want to come back for a couple weeks of reshoots? They say, sure. How much are you paying me? They don't go for free.
And I think that the most traumatic event featuring that interest problem in the history of the box office, wasn't it? It was that one musical film. Is that right? That's
you talking about Hello, Dolly?
Hello, Dolly. Yes.
Yeah. The film that broke Fox. That is why there is a Century City. Well, there it is. Well, actually, Cleopatra before that was Century City, but
Oh yes.
yeah, that was about personalities. That was about David Merrick and Daryl Zanuck. And David Merrick, the Broadway producer, owned Hello Dolly. And he said, I'll sell you the rights to make the movie with one condition. You can't open the movie as long as it's still playing on Broadway because I don't want to kill my audience with your movie.
Sure.
And they thought, well, it'll take us a year to make the movie. Back when movies only took a year to make instead of 3 or 4 or 6 or God knows what. It'll be off Broadway by then. Want to bet? Merrick kept it running. In fact, he at one point changed the entire cast with Pearl Bailey as Dolly and made it a black version. That got people to come back again and again. And he was a minority stockholder in Fox, and he wanted to run Fox Studios, and he hated Daryl Zanuck, who did. And he basically went to the stockholders meeting and said, how can you have this guy run your studio? How stupid did he have to be to make this stupid deal with me that's keeping your movie from going out, that you're paying interest on the money that you spent to make it? So, again, petty personalities, as long as we were talking about Bernie at Coachella, get involved in these things, and then Katie barred the door.
Oh, I love that story. I love that. It's just,
yeah, it was like, I mean, he literally said, how stupid did he have to be to make this deal with me? Take him out, put me in.
Whoops. There you go. Now, on the flip side of this, Snow White might not be doing so well. Hello Dolly had its problems, but Minecraft sure doesn't right here. Minecraft movie hits $550 million globally. This is via Variety, and they had some extra to say on this. Is on its way to hit the elusive $1 billion mark as ticket sales soared past $500 million after 2 weekends of release. It's a huge, huge movie. Lou, do you have any thoughts about why this movie in particular is so successful right now?
Well, I haven't seen the film, so I don't know, but I understand it's relatively apolitical, and it isn't promoting sexual variations in relationships. And, so when you got to take the kids to the movies, by God, there's something. You know who's making money off a movie again by this movie, by the way? McDonald's. McDonald's has the Happy Meal franchise on this. They've got these terrible, ugly green boxes that they put the food in that are Minecraft themed. And I was joking with you before we started. I said, can you believe it? Jason Momoa's biggest hit, and he doesn't take his shirt off as far as I know. So just goes to show you. But the other funny thing about Minecraft, and I actually wrote a couple of pieces that'll be coming out shortly in that Park Place, about the exhibitors are all trying, what do we do to get people to come back to the theaters? What do we do? And one idea is they're building, at a huge expense, a lot more large format theaters of various kinds. But then they started talking about, maybe if we let people text in the movie theater, and maybe if we let them smoke dope, they would come back. Now, already, meanwhile, this movie apparently has people doing a TikTok thing where at certain points in the movie, they climb on each other's shoulders and parade around the theater, and they throw food at the screen. And the theaters are really angry about this because, of course, it means that in order to clear up for the next show, it's taking longer because they haven't got the staff. And they're threatening people with arrest if they do this, and literally putting disclaimers outside the theaters here and in the UK saying, if you do this stuff, you will be ejected and you won't get a refund. So I don't know what that's about and why people are throwing food at the screen and at each other because of this movie, but apparently that's a thing. And now they're going to say, well, but what'll fix it, we'll let them get high first.
Yes, yeah. I don't think it's
that'll make everything so much better. And of course, what they're missing is what'll get people back in the theaters? Good movies. Stop making stinkers, which of course the theater owners are powerless to do or not do. Anyway, I don't know. Are they selling a lot of Minecraft toys from this too? I don't know.
I don't know. Here you go. Here's some stuff going on here, and
look, I mean, now when you consider what popcorn costs, to buy it, not to eat it, I mean, the first thing I do as a theater is stop the endlessly refillable popcorn deal that they have in most of these theaters.
Sure. So
It's kind of taking the. It just occurs to me it's taking the participatory Rocky Horror Show screening level to a whole new level of mayhem. But
yes. There's been a lot of mayhem in theaters across the country, as you beautifully pointed out.
And they're really PO'd in the UK, apparently, because they're literally threatening people with arrest. So
really,
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, it looks like some videos that I had bookmarked here have actually been taken down for copyright reasons. Interesting, but yeah, there you go. I mean, it's been a wild ride for theater owners at these specific screenings right there. Sorry about the audio clipping in there.
Well, it would certainly keep me from going to this movie if I had planned to go to it anyway.
Right.
I don't want to, I didn't go to get a popcorn shower. I went to, especially because that popcorn is also healthy and clean and hasn't been drooled on by these people first. Ugh. Anyway, but I'm glad it's a hit movie in the world. So
yeah, and I think the producers of the film, the director and so forth, and
he said, "Oh, it's no big deal." Yeah, the director's almost encouraging it. Oh, I think it's kind of cute that they're doing it. And I'm going, oh, there's a responsible member of the creative community for you.
Beyond that, I think they really did cater this movie towards its audience and towards its maybe clientele and base. I think you have a lot of Generation Alpha and Z going to see this, and I think for one of the first times anyway that this generation has been going to the movies, this is definitely a movie that caters towards their unique sensibilities. And
yeah, why don't all of you in the chat who are older than 12 think about the first movies you went to and how they made an impression on you.
Right.
And think about, had that movie been, oh, I remember my first time going to the theater. Everybody was throwing popcorn at me and screaming and riding each other around. And I'm going, not quite the same thing as memories of classics.
Well, hey, if one of your first classics was 2001: A Space Odyssey, perhaps there were some other things going on in your theater. That's I don't know, maybe coming back into vogue and style. I'm not sure when it comes to getting back into these theaters and auditoriums. But I just find it profoundly interesting how this is all kind of worked out. And I would say, with Disney having spent so much of their capital on these films and like Brave New World, for example, or Snow White, or even the upcoming Thunderbolts and all these different things, you would think that they would be able to have their films resonate with their with these key demographics, but they just haven't been able to do that. And to have Minecraft break through in this way, in a way that Disney so desperately needs, I think is really profoundly interesting.
I just had a thought. I was reading the chat and people were chiming in with their movie memories. And Jan Monroe says, quote, I remember going to Nashville when I was about 12. Grandma thought they were playing Old Yeller. I wonder if Disney made a remake of Old Yeller, would they have to change the name to make the Chinese happy? Just the random thoughts that pop into my head.
Terrible.
That you all tune in here for.
All right.
Anyway.
Of China.
Yes, that brings us to a big subject, doesn't it?
Yes, especially as it relates to the movies, right? Because now, this article is a little bit old, because here it says China threatens to ban U.S. Hollywood movies in explosive retaliation to Trump tariffs, despite years of studio pandering. Now we have it confirmed. Here we go, Luis Fernando. In other not as exciting news for Hollywood movies, Chinese regulators made it official on Thursday that in response to Trump's tariffs, they will, quote, moderately reduce the number of Hollywood releases getting access to China's box office, suggesting that they will also increase releases of films from other markets in China to meet the demand for international films instead. So you can see the kind of breakdown right here. The current agreement between China and Hollywood is to release at least 34 Hollywood films per year in exchange for 25% of revenue share for Hollywood.
But put up that chart that Alan Ng did.
Yes.
About how much money actually is involved. Look at there. Here's all these big movies. Deadpool and Wolverine, Moana 2, Despicable Me 4, blah, 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 blah. Add it all up at the bottom.
Yeah. I mean, it's It really is almost nothing, especially when
But
you
look at
consider
that
the
difference in global and China. I mean,
right.
divide that 429 by, what is it, 10 films here or 12? It ain't a lot of money, folks.
Well, yeah,
They haven't been a big number for the box office for America in a long time.
yeah, and the total studio take is right there at the very corner, right there. I mean, it's just we're not talking about a lot of money, and especially when you consider the trade war itself, right? How much the U.S. actually imports from China and how much the U.S. exports to China. I mean, there's no comparison at all. So,
Well, and let's talk about that for a minute, because I happen to think there is a big misunderstanding out there about tariffs. I'm not going to go into all the politics and all the stuff that gets thrown around.
sure.
And in the sky is falling, the stock market's crashing. Yeah, for 2 days, and then it came back. And surprise. Here's the thing. I saw a story, I guess it was this morning, about a company putting a surcharge on their bill. You know, like who was it? Who was doing an egg surcharge? The breakfast place, Waffle House, was
Yeah.
putting a. Well, this was a company. They said, well, we have to, and they showed their receipt, and it said Trump tariff surcharge of 5%. But then you look into the company. What do they make? Can I say the DILDO word on television here? It was sexual aids, and I'm going, a 5% surcharge. It's that evil Trump who's making my faux appendage more expensive. Look, gang. Putting aside that particular kind of product, let's look at those people buying popcorn in the movies to throw it at each other. If you make popcorn buckets in China for Disney or Universal or AMC or whoever, or if, more importantly, you make action figures for Hasbro and for sale at Target and all the stores, okay? The difference in production cost is huge, because if you were paying Americans to do those, you'd be paying people, what, $15 an hour? And in like Vietnam and China and those places, they're getting like 50 cents an hour, okay, for the same net result. Well, I hope it's the same. It may not be quality-wise, but people aren't buying them for the quality. Yeah, there's somebody making a killing on eBay, they think. Anyway,
Indeed.
I looked it up, and they said the average retail for a good action figure out there is anywhere between $15 and $50, depending on the complexity and the size and what have you. If I get something made at 50 cents an hour versus $15 an hour,
Mhm.
and I sell it in America to fans for $30 or $40 or $50, the tariff is part of that. But I'm still having this massive markup at retail, at wholesale, at all the levels of sale. So if I took a little less, I could keep the price the same and I'd still make money. I just wouldn't make quite as much. So you see what I'm saying? When they're trying to convince you, oh, it's that evil guy in Washington, the orange guy's fault that your toy costs $10 more than it used to. Well, it doesn't have to cost $10 more. That's a choice that the manufacturer, the middleman, and the retailer make as far as what price to charge. If they wanted instead to say, well, the labor is a little more expensive, so we'll make 10% less, but we'll still make money, all would be the same. You see?
Mhm.
So this idea that there's this automatic requirement that they raise prices is not true. It just isn't true. Not in a free market, not in America. It's a choice. And if by doing so, by raising the price of, say, I don't know, an action Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader or whatever, if it means that you sell fewer of them because they're more expensive, it also means, well, I was going to buy a Luke and a Darth, but I guess I have to choose one or the other.
Mhm.
So the overall sales may go down because you've priced yourself out of the let's buy two market. You know, I remember the day, like with records, when I'd go to Tower Records on the Sunset Strip because there was a new, I don't know, Beatles record or the Eagles or anybody, but that would cause them to sell Nobody went in and just bought that Michael Jackson record. They bought that and 5 other records because as long as they were there, they browsed around and they bought a bunch more. But if those bunch more cost 20%, 30% more per copy, you might buy 2 instead of 5 or 1 instead of 2. So all money is, as they say, fungible. And how you choose to spend it and how you choose to charge for what you're charging is, at the bottom line, the business of the producer and the retailer. So for them to blame the tariff on, oh, we can't do this, we have to charge much, much, much more. No, you don't. You could just make a little bit less. Or ideally, what's happening, which is that companies are saying, well, we're going to move our factories stateside. A lot of the big car makers from Europe, for example, are moving their production from Mexico, from Canada, from overseas to here to avoid the tariffs. Well, good. That's more jobs, both big jobs in the construction of factories and fewer but steady jobs for the people that work there on a regular basis. What's wrong with that? So, and aside from all the other considerations, in the case of things like we saw with medicine during COVID, in the case of things like chips that go into weaponry or computers, it's a national security issue as well as an economic one. So anyway, enough of my rant about that. But it don't have to be the way they're making it. And who they're blaming is a political choice, not a factual one. So
correct. And we've seen a lot of that. Well, over the last week or so, if people remember the headline that were propagated maybe just a couple of years ago. So we've seen a lot of that disproportionate level of outrage, let's say, or relative news coverage and the opinion pieces from that. I guess I got to ask you, Lou, if less films are going to be distributed in China, do you think the Chinese problem of changing films in order to placate a certain country and its interests and maybe its government, do you think that is exacerbated as movies or studios get more competitive about which films actually are selected, or do you think that gets reduced because it's like, well, there's going to be there's not a lot of box office take?
In other words, you're saying they won't cater to their taste because their taste makes up less of the profit. Well,
yeah.
If it was just about retail, bottom line, that's exactly what would happen. But it's not, is it? It's political. It's about well, look, whatever else you could say about Universal versus Disney, at least Universal only built 1 park there, not 2.
True.
Whatever else you can say, Disney, with those, we'd like to thank the authorities in the region where you have your concentration camps for people who have a religion you don't like for helping make this movie. There's been a level of butt kissing on behalf of the Iger company that is shameful. And again, there's the 2 sides of the coin are they don't own as much of those parks and they don't own as much of the results, and they're making less and less. And but unlike, for example, the Japanese parks, where the Japanese pay top dollar for the not just the IP rights but the technology and the construction, the Chinese get a friends and family discount that is unwarranted. But who's going to say no? Who's going to say no?
So do studios continue to placate? I guess the answer is because maybe ideologies in some way align between the 2 nations, or between the the people creating.
Well, look, you have to understand something. China is going through a huge economic collapse. Okay, they built all of these ghost cities and sold their people on the idea that, hey, you should buy into these condos in these buildings, because most of the people who were coming into the cities to get work because it paid better and was more secure, they thought, than growing rice in the countryside. Net, those manufacturing jobs are disappearing. those buildings are worth nothing. Those people are not happy, and the actual population is going way down because that's just the way it is. There is one guy that I like a lot of what he says, who's a kind of a futurist, who predicts that the actual ethnicity of Han Chinese will more or less disappear in the next 10 years. We'll see what happens with that. But they're not as, they talk a good game. But, and of course, that makes them more dangerous, because then the wag the dog scenario takes place, and they're more likely to do something stupid about Taiwan as a way of rallying the people. But as I said on, I guess it was on our show or on the pro show? It was on our show on Tuesday. People who don't care about their tanks running over students in Tiananmen Square certainly don't care about their trackless rides running over children in the theme parks. There's a different mentality there. There's a different attitude about the sanctity of human life and the value of goods and everything else. And pretending that that's not true is foolish. And we know who the fool is. He's over there on the right in that picture. Anyway.
Indeed. I want to go ahead and play this little piece of audio right here because, the 45th and 47th President of the United States was actually asked about this whole,
yes.
Banning of Hollywood films here. I think this is fantastic. If you can't hear the question's basically trying to retaliate today by reducing the number of American films that can be shown there. What's your reaction? So here we go. Let's get that reaction.
China retaliated today by reducing the number of American films that can be shown there. What's your reaction to them now targeting cultural exports from the United States?
I think I've heard of worse things.
That's pretty good. Right there. We were all kind of speculating on what the reaction would be from the 47th president, and now we've heard it. So I think that was pretty amusing. I think it would be wise for the U.S. and for Hollywood filmmakers to stop catering so much towards just one single country. I understand that country has an enormous population. There's no question about that. But if it only contributes a max 25% to your overall global box office right there, and we've seen how those numbers correlate. And here's the thing too, China really hasn't been embracing Hollywood films for the last 6 years or so. Just really hasn't happened. Got to move on. And it was a trap to begin with. So
and them's the truth. Next.
Indeed. Let's see here.
Are we telling people how to send us questions, and are they?
Yes. So let's see here.
Let's put the address up now, and then
put the address up there. It's either online at yahoo.com. I actually haven't checked it most recently. Unfortunately, I've been dealing with a couple of things while I've been down here. But 23PO online at yahoo.com. If you have any questions that
just remember the axiom of the motion picture industry, Vash, while you're there. No names on location.
Yes, no names on location, indeed. That's a good one right there. I love that.
That's everybody in the business. No names on location.
If you have a question, by the way, that maybe you submitted or so forth, but you're here, please go ahead and provide us those questions right now. We'll answer them thusly. Like Ken Reinhardt, for example, coming in here with the woodchuck chuck question. Woodchuck chuck would chuck a whole lot of wood. I think it's my answer to that. She and China think we care if they watch our films. How does that affect the American economy? Yeah, that's the thing.
You saw that chart. Minimally is the answer to that question. Well, wait a minute.
Go ahead, please.
It affects the economy minimally as far as the return. But if we're spending money to make movies that we think they're going to like, and that's stupid, then it affects it on the expenditure side, doesn't it?
Indeed. That's a possibility, I think.
Because we have to assume over the last 10, 15 years, somebody in some meeting deciding whether to greenlight something or not said, besides, we'll make $50 million in China. Oops. If that was the reason for making a stinker, that's one more reason that was wrong.
Mm. Now, usually I would put these.
Run! Well,
Run!
he went, Lou and Vash, so I thought I should say, run!
I like that. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ron, for joining us. And
by the way, if you out there in the chat don't know about Follow the Bradleys Fun, you should. It's a fun channel to follow. And they have fun and share it. So go subscribe over there too. And needless to say, you should be subscribed here and hitting the like button and all that other fun stuff that helps make YouTube happy.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, looks like we have a question via super chat. Thank you so much, Eric Stratton, for the 777. I like that. Cool stuff going up and shown on new TV/YouTube ads for next week's FanFest at Universal Studios Hollywood. Well, what are you most looking forward to? It's got to be Back to the Future for me. I've got to see that DeLorean go back in time in Courthouse Square like it did back in 1985 when Steven Spielberg and
especially
Robert
since
filmed it.
We can kind of read between the lines on the minimal concept art they've given us on England to say they're going to build Courthouse Square over there in Jolly Old too.
Oh,
and have a roller coaster that goes however many gigabytes it goes. Looks like a triple launch coaster, so looks like fun.
It looks absolutely awesome, and some people were speculating because it's like, okay, if you were to have a coaster go to 88 miles per hour, how high would those spikes actually need to be in order to accommodate for that speed, which you can see right here. Let me see if I can bring this up. People were saying, well, anywhere between 250 to 300 feet. So here you go, right there.
I wonder how much the weather over there affects something like that, the physics of it, because it's foggy a lot and rainy a lot, and therefore the air is denser, and therefore resistance is not futile, but different. I wonder if they judge. The science of roller coasters fascinates me, and I have no idea whether they are altered based on where they're being built. By the way, they finished the track officially at Hollywood for the Fast and Furious coaster, didn't they?
They did. The track is officially complete, so testing should be taking place within, I'm hearing, maybe a month or so. So that's a lot of fun to see. Also, too, I don't know if you saw this, Lou. Let me see if I can bring this up as well.
Already anticipating it rattles, it makes noise complaints from the people who moved in on the hill and were surprised there was a theme park and a studio down there. Oh, God.
For Universal Fan Fest nights, they actually just announced this. Scott Gustin, the experience at Universal Fan Fest nights is an immersive walkthrough experience aboard the USS Enterprise. It also includes an original set piece from the Picard series. Fan Fest nights at Universal Studios Hollywood is on select nights from April 25th through May 18th. You can see this right here. What that actually looks like. It looks super.
It looks like the old Vegas attraction is what it looks like to me. Which was great.
That's a bad thing.
Which was great.
Mm-hmm.
But let me point out a little thing. Some people have been speculating, well, gosh, will they buy the Star Trek IP and put it in Universal Epic at sometime on one of those expansion pads? Or here's one thing I can guarantee you. I can't tell you that that'll happen. But if it does, it will be Kirk and Picard's universe, not section whatever it is universe. In other words, it won't be like Galaxy's Edge where, hey, we've got the hottest IP in the world, let's put in all the characters nobody gives a damn about.
Yes, because
Universal isn't that stupid.
No, and that's the thing about what is it?
That really looks like the one from Vegas. It just does.
Oh yeah.
For those who aren't aware, there was a fantastic Star Trek attraction at the Hilton in Las Vegas where you got beamed aboard the Enterprise in a very clever illusion. And you wound up on the bridge. And the deal was that one of you was the forebear of Captain Picard. And the Borg or the Klingons, I forget which, were trying to kill you in order to have him never be born. And then you got an emotion simulator and flew over the Las Vegas Strip in a shuttlecraft and all kinds of other fun stuff. And then it wound up at the promenade from DS9 with shops and restaurants and all kinds of neat things. In fact, that's the Vegas thing. It was this great museum of props that was the queue. I mean, you wanted to stand in that queue longer to see all the toys, but it didn't bring in gamblers, and so bye.
Yep. Well, we can still have our themed experiences at Universal Studios Hollywood, at least on FanFest nights. Definitely.
I
very,
envy you
very
so
excited.
much that you're going to that, because that
yes.
looks like fun.
Yes, I was going to go the first day.
That was almost enough for me to get on an airplane and go back to my hometown, but not quite. I have a few other pressing engagements here.
Well, Lou, I will tell you all about it when I actually
I know you will. I know you will. But yeah, the Back to the Future stuff, and then God, there's all kinds of fun things at that FanFest deal.
Yes, yes. Like for example, like I was just saying before, they're going to be reconstructing Hill Valley there in Courthouse Square, which will also have the
Mark
DeLorean
Daly. No, it was at the Hilton.
Yep. And it's going to be recreating 1955 Hill Valley. And you're also going to have the Enchantment of the Sea dance where Martin McFly is rocking out on stage. That's pretty cool. You just saw the Star Trek experience right there. Dungeons and Dragons will have a presence. One Piece and Jujutsu Kaisen will also have a presence. Harry Potter's doing some cool stuff. Yoshi meet and greet. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff and more. And I think it's a pretty good value at like $75 a person or something like that, which is less than half of some of the other nights that Disneyland has over there on their theme park resort. So there you go. Let's see here.
Somebody says, is Vegas still big now that sports gambling? Of course, Vegas is still big.
Yes.
In fact, the thing that's about to open is in August is the permanent Halloween Horror Nights thing in Vegas, and what's already opened, and I think Culture, who's going to be there next week, is going to go, is the John Wick sort of escape room experience where they've built the Las Vegas version of the Continental, also in that Area 15 complex where the Universal thing is going to be.
Yes, and that opens, Universal Horror Unleashed in Vegas opens August 14th, like Lou was saying before. And yeah, that John Wick experience, I definitely want to see that.
Yeah.
I think Vegas is still a tourist attraction. I think, I don't think they played it quite well when they charged for parking at their resorts.
Yes.
That was a bad move. But, there are still enough attractions to get you down.
And you might say, well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that a lot, and I mean, I don't know what percentage, but a huge amount of the people who go to Vegas go there from the Southern California and Arizona area and get there by driving, not flying. So, they take their car.
Unfortunately,
and it used to be free to park at any of those places, and now not. Did Chapek do that? Did Chapek do what?
Implement the parking fee, right? There.
Oh yeah, well,
sounds like a Chapek.
And there's all these rumors running around. Circus is going to be imploded or torn down and something new built, and there's rumors that Disney is buying that property to build a new hotel, but I don't know where they'd get the money at this stage, and I kind of doubt it. So they're too busy wrecking fire museums to do that.
I was just watching an old kind of documentary style piece from Expedition Theme Park talking about the Mirage. I think you said in there too that Steve Wynn was part of the Vegas moguls, I guess, and implemented like the pedestrian walkways and so forth in order to connect these resorts to each other. Stuff like that. It's definitely about attracting and then having people actually visit all your resorts and hotels and so forth.
That was my dear departed dad used to say when he saw all those people walking up and down the strip all night long, he said, that doesn't look like fun. That looks like the Bataan Death March. It's work. You got to see it all, by God, and you're going to march 4 miles or whatever it is in that heat. I don't think so.
Yeah. Recommend to do that at night.
Oh, there you go. Circus, the Bond location. That's right. The Bond movie was there. And Q was there fixing the slot machines to pay off Jill St. John. So she could show a bit more cheek, aren't you, Tiffany?
Whoa. That about just about wraps us up right here for this edition of Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. Unfortunately, we had to have a little bit of a shorter show today just because, we've got some things going on there, and I got to make it actually back home to Arizona before the week's end. So thank you so much, Lou, for joining me on this amazing Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you.
Well, we wandered all over the map as usual, but it's a good map, and so what the heck?
Yes. Got to learn about the Spruce Goose and the Queen Mary. Got to do a little Vegas sightseeing and what's going on in Universal's neck of the woods. I think this was a whole lot of fun. And hopefully everybody in the chat and those listening
Sam Spurgeon,
better for it.
Sam Spurgeon, I didn't know there was a pool down there. He'll get that.
Nice. Well, Lou, what you got going on the genre guys real fast?
Well, we just did Tombstone, one of the great movies, I think, of all time. And we did it as kind of a tribute to Val Kilmer. And the next one we're going to do is a trip with King Arthur to the Sword and the Stone without the carousel. And that is Excalibur. And we shall see what comes next after that.
Yes.
And what's next here from that collection of things?
Yes, Genre Guys is making its triumphant return back on T3PO very, very soon. We've got actually some videos right now in the can, like Superman, for instance, and which was hosted by Marvin Montero, I believe, who was playing hosting duties from Henry Table, who was out on that particular episode. That's going to be a whole lot of fun to listen to. So definitely subscribe here in order to get Genre Guys 90 days after release. We might release double or triple a week in order to get caught up right there. So there's going to be a whole lot of content coming your way. So
excellent.
Stick around. Indeed. So definitely like this video if you haven't liked this video just yet. And also to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Share us out if you really do like us. And thank you so much for joining us for Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. Next week at the same time. Also to I'm gonna be traveling around right here, so the times for the show might alter just slightly to reflect that.
Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, we notified well in advance of any time changes right there. And I think, T3PO Live at 3 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. You can check us out as well, where, Lou and I will participate in discussions about theme parks. So that's really, really cool. Thank you so much for joining us.
Theme parks, are they still a thing?
They're still a thing, Lou.
Wow.
And guess what? They're heating up more than ever with the opening of Epic Universal UK, and all kinds of stuff. So
Plano, let's not forget Plano.
Don't forget about Plano. And apparently Disney didn't forget about Paris. We'll be talking about what they have in store there as well.
Yeah.
It's not as exciting as Universal.
Flat rides and lions. Anyway, mais bien sûr, monsieur.
And
à bientôt.
We'll be I guess we'll be leaving in international style, aren't we, Lou?
Yes.
Thank you so much. We'll see you around here next time.